So we're now going to go into our next expert, which is JoyceOng, who is one of the chamber directors and runs MarketingTech, which she's a very kind of active member in the chamber and in the Kingston community with all things to do with apps and digital technology. So this session really is going to talk about what are your priorities? How do you get yourselves kind of focused on this big noise of digital? So I'd like to welcome Joyce. Take the floor.
Thank you, Forbes. Right, so let me just share screen here if I can, and let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen at all?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, let me just move that down. Right, okay. To those of you who may not know me, my name is JoyceOng. I run a marketing consultancy for small, medium-sized businesses, and together with a technology partner, we deliver technology solutions such as mobile apps, and also we've just recently launched our SEO services as well, all aimed at small businesses. So personally, I have a keen interest in using both marketing and technology to serve businesses, but not just any tech, but affordable, commercially tried and tested technology that could actually help small businesses to grow. So that's where my interest is. So I've been given this topic, what are your priorities? And I must say it's quite a big topic to be covering. So I'll do my best to try and cover all of that and give you a good overview of marketing channels within the next 20 minutes or so. So let me just minimize the screen here. So now this is an overview of the popular small marketing channels that we're using today. I have to say this is not a textbook definition of marketing channels before I go on. In fact, the physical textbooks that you read about on marketing today are probably a little bit outdated with each passing month. I hope there are no academics in this room when I say that, but that's true with the fast pace of technology that's shaping the way marketing has evolved over the years. So this is actually my attempt at grouping together different marketing activities that we commonly, small businesses, that you see small businesses commonly implement or practice. And they are tried and tested popular ways of marketing. So I'm going to attempt to go through each one of these very quickly. And obviously I won't be covering all of it, but I'll start with websites, blogs, Google My Business, and of course SEO, which will be covered later on by one of the experts in this course. So websites, blogs, Google My Business, this is where most people would start. Most consumers would probably start when they try to search for product or service. So the aim of having these marketing tools essentially are to be visible and to be searchable to people who may or may not necessarily know the business well or may not know the brand at all. Next are landing pages or marketing funnels, as we call it. So these are essentially web pages, but a very focused form of web page whereby there is usually a very clear message on the web page with one and only one call to action. So the aim of that web page is essentially to direct attention of the consumer to the offering on that page. So landing pages are good at driving campaigns that you have with specific messages. Funnels are essentially just a series of landing pages that lead the consumer into taking a particular action or actions. Email marketing, we're all quite familiar with that, as it's been around for a while. So the aim of email marketing would be to nurture the prospects that we have been collecting with the aim of converting them into customers at some point. Social media, this will be covered in the later part of this course. Essentially, social media is there for us to engage followers. In the last 10 years or so, it has become one of the key marketing functions. And then Julia covered touched a little bit on online reviews, case studies. These are important for a business to be able to provide social proof. in the form of comments generated by other followers or users of the product or service. Mobile apps, essentially, they're not so much to lead generate, but more to engage and convert the consumer in a way that websites and social media do not do that well. So mobile apps have a specific aim in mind in terms of the whole marketing mix. And then we have paid advertising. And as I understand, this will be covered in the last part of this course tomorrow, where probably we'll be talking about common forms of advertising, whether this is magazine advertising, Google advertising, Facebook advertising, for example. So these are effective advertising channels that are commonly used today. And the aim of that is obviously to generate leads through paid advertising. And after that, then to nurture or retarget these leads that you have generated. And as we can see, Google has done this very well in terms of retargeting the audience. You may have seen ads that are following you everywhere when you surf the internet. And it can be quite annoying at times, but that's essentially retargeting. And then Facebook has, I would say Facebook is a bit more sophisticated in terms of nurturing leads. So Facebook has the ability to remarket to the same set of audience that it's generated. So that's a really powerful technique. So that's for paid advertising. And then we have the area of chatbots and messaging, which are essentially to aid with the sales process. So these are for facilitating sales. You would have seen chatbots on websites that you've clicked on, and out pops a little chat box asking you if they can be of service. And there you go. That's your sales process. That's the initial part of the sales process. Chatbots can be very useful in funneling the prospects towards a sale. Messaging, we're familiar with WhatsApp messaging, and lately you've seen businesses using WhatsApp messaging to try and nurture their audience. And also a very good, powerful tool to use in messaging to prospects is Facebook Messenger, which I'll touch on. Facebook Messenger is yet another tool that's been known to be very effective there. So you have software platforms such as ManyChat, which has been around for a number of years, which helps the business to nurture audiences from their Facebook page. And next we have, shall we say, more traditional established forms of marketing, which still have a place in today's world. I would say these are more your offline approaches, which we shouldn't forget, because some of it is really, really cost effective. For example, flyers, direct mail has lately come back into fashion, whereas a couple of years it's sort of died in the background, maybe because it's quite expensive. It's a relatively more expensive form of marketing, but it still works in this day. And also point of sale as well that you see in your TED cards, for example, your banners, posters that you see in shops. So these are essentially to generate inquiries. Events, networking, sales calls, public speaking, that's another channel as well, which are more established channels to help generate sales. So I'm touching on a combination of online and offline approaches here, as I feel it's really important for a business to consider both and don't just drop the offline channels and go full force into digital channels, because that may not work for your particular type of business. So I think a clever use of both online and offline approaches is important. And public relations, lastly, this will be covered again in the course itself. So I won't go too much into public relations, also mainly because I'm not really an expert into PR. Obviously, I have missed out a whole chunk of other marketing channels, such as partnerships, referral programs, which I won't cover in this topic because we have very limited time. But I feel that these are the channels which I've listed here are the main ones that we should consider. So what I would say, a couple of points I would make in addition to what you see on this slide is there is a lot of power now in the hands of the small business, as in there is a huge array of tools and platforms that we can really use in today's world to help a business automate some of your marketing tasks. Whereas not so many years ago, these tools were costly, they were really clunky to use, and only available to the large corporation. So there is a lot of power that small businesses and startups have at their disposal. But the problem is that creates another new problem altogether. There's so many different channels and so many different marketing activities. Where does one start? And how do you actually prioritize your marketing? It can be really overwhelming. I mean, just looking at the slide alone, I can imagine someone who's a startup would feel really overwhelmed doing it. I would have to say that there is no one size fits all marketing plan for all businesses. There isn't. If there is, then we'll all be really rich by now. But there is usually a way to approach your marketing if you're a small business to make a marketing decision on where to invest your marketing. Where's the best place to invest your marketing? So personally, I would first look at, for example, a small business with a base of customers. You have an established base of followers and customers. I would first go back and look at your existing customer base, and decide and look at those customers that you would like more of, those that you want to continue serving, because these customers would, for example, give you the highest lifetime value, i.e., they would give you recurring income, for example, or these could be the customers who are likely to buy again from you over a period of time. So, in other words, segment your customer base and try and determine which group of customers you would want to focus on. And secondly, see where these customers would hang out, where these prospects, similar to the customers that you want to cultivate, where they hang out, and which channels will actually allow you to reach more of these type of customers or potential customers. So it's easier said than done, but to find out, I would decide on, first of all, a few channels to focus on, to test with the audience and test your content with the audience, and see if you could engage with them there, and then decide if that audience in that channel are the right fit for your business, if that makes sense. So, for example, if you're a small business and you sell a service on Facebook and you decide, okay, I'm going to give away loads of freebies and test my market, freebies on Facebook, you may end up just attracting those who are perpetually looking for freebies, but may not want to buy in the end. That can happen. And therefore, they may not necessarily be your customers, but you may want to continue nurturing them in a low cost way. Um, but however, if you sell a low price product and you give away free samples on Facebook and Instagram, if you're that sort of business, product-based business, selling low-price products, then this may be a good way. Selling on Facebook and Instagram, giving away freebies there may be a good way to get repeat orders if they like your product. So it depends on the type of business you're in. And obviously having a marketing plan in place so you can actually implement this in a systematic fashion and track your results over a period of time. If you're not getting the right engagement from your ideal customers, the target group of customers that you like to be serving, then I would say tweak your message, change your content a little bit, test, and move on. If this doesn't work, then move on to another activity. How long should you test it for? That's a big question. That really depends on the channel that you are using. It could be for Facebook, it could be perhaps 3 to 6 months for you to test a particular campaign to see if it works on that audience. For other channels, it may be shorter, it may be longer. Now, you may sometimes have more than one type of ideal customer because you have different service or different product offerings, which is quite often the case nowadays with small businesses, in which case you will then need to tailor the message to that particular customer group and check that the channels that you use to convey these messages will allow you to reach out to that particular group of customer. So then you actually have a matrix of different customer segments and different messaging for that different customer group, if that makes sense. Now, some of you may say, if you don't know who your ideal customer is, what do you do? Well, the answer to that is you would then have to go back a couple of steps before you actually start investing in your marketing or start being dragged in all directions by shiny new objects that we see in front of us. Actually take a couple of steps backwards and do your market research to test your service and product. To see who your audience should be. So market research is really important if you don't really know who your ideal customer should be. Now, the channels that you should be prioritizing also in part depends on the stage of the business you're at. So for example, for startups to early stage business, you would most likely want to focus more on lead generation activities, building more followers, building your base of ideal customers, for example. So more of your marketing spend may go towards building up customers. If you're a more mature business, then you may perhaps want to move a larger proportion of your marketing investment to nurturing your existing base of customers and followers, and perhaps less on generating leads because you have enough of them, perhaps for at that point in time, if we're in that lucky position. And lastly, I would say, as Forbes has touched on, also delegate to your team if you have an in-house team of people helping you, or if not, then by all means outsource to a freelancer, a consultant, or an agency. There's no one person who's really an expert on all aspects of marketing. So depending on your budget, you may need to hire a mix of people with different skill sets to help you realize or implement your marketing campaigns. Or if you can find an agency with all these different skill sets, then by all means do that. And I think there's a bit on the slide which I did not cover. Just to summarize this whole slide, there's such a concept called search or intentional marketing versus interruption or stop the scroll sort of marketing. Julia covered that initially in her talk. So we all need a bit of both as small businesses. Search marketing is important if you're a business and your brand isn't well known. And you then want to focus your efforts on search marketing, because bear in mind that people who are searching for products or services like yours, but may not necessarily know you as a brand, they would be searching for you on Google. So that's intentional marketing. They have an intention to buy. And that's really, really a key point. These people have an intention to buy something similar to what you have to offer. So we definitely need to explore search marketing channels if you're lead generating. Interruption marketing is what we call stop the scroll sorts of marketing on Facebook and LinkedIn, whereby you would be scrolling through loads of content. And so the aim of interruption marketing for the marketer is to stop the scroll, to catch their attention with headlines that really grab their attention, and talk about the pain points, their problems, for example, or tell stories that would actually inspire them to want to know you a little bit more. Interruption marketing has a place in marketing. It doesn't necessarily address the consumer with an intention to buy, but it still has a very important place in today's marketing. So I would dare suggest that for the small business to really look into appointing both types of marketing channels, both search, intentional, and interruption marketing channels. So last slide here. I do apologize if you've had to squint to look at the slide. There's quite a bit of information there on the slide, but I just want to quickly touch on a very important point here on your demographic audience, the type of audience that you're talking to. This is a piece of research from Salesforce, which surveyed more than 8,000 people across the world. And the idea is to gauge customer expectations when making a buying decision. So, so this research there's a lot of text here, but I'll quickly summarize it. So this research is split into 3 different demographic, surveying millennials or Generation Z, who are those people born between 1981 to 2000. And then you have the Generation X's, people born between 1965 to 1980. And then you have the baby boomers, who are people born before 1965. So we know who we are here. So why am I showing you this? Because on this piece of research, basically they are gauging customer expectations. So you can see customers who prefer the following channels when communicating with companies. So the top few channels here that you can see on this chart are email, in-person, phone, online chat, live support, mobile apps. So these are the top few channels that people typically use. And on this side of the chart is split into the 3 different demographic. The lightly shaded ones are the 62% here are the baby boomers. And then the green dots, the dark green dots are the Generation X's. And the mid-green dots are the younger ones, shall we say, the Generation Z and the millennials. So obviously you can see that there's a high proportion of these Generation X and millennials who are using omni-channels. So the definition of omni-channels by Salesforce essentially is these 2 demographic tend to focus or expect a business to have more than a few channels when they are communicating with the business. So that's quite a key point to note. Whereas for the baby boomers, to a lesser extent to the Generation X's, they would have a lesser expectation of being able to communicate with the companies or more than a few channels. For example, and this I am just generalizing. For example, baby boomers would tend to focus more on websites and emails and phone calls, for example, compared to Generation Z, who would expect you to have maybe a chatbot, a mobile app for them to communicate with you. So that's the difference in consumer expectations here. And here I'll highlight that 40% of customers won't do business with a company if they can't use their preferred channels.
Joyce,
Yes.
I'm conscious of the time and we're just slightly going over. Do you want to just quickly wrap up? It's a really informative graph, actually, really informative chart there. Is there just a few kind of wrap up lines that we can add here?
Yes, I was just going to wrap up actually. So I think the point I'm trying to make, and you can look at this piece of research on Salesforce if you like. There's a whole lot of information there on customer buying behavior, which I obviously won't be going through. But the point here is it's no longer enough to have just a website, a phone, and an email address if you want to be selling to millennials and Generation Z consumers. Because if you do just that, you'll be missing out on a huge pool of potential customers there. And with that, I end my presentation. Thank you.
If you can close the slide, that'd be.
Yes.
That's great. Just get this back up. Thank you very much, Joyce. There's a lot of, it's a very complicated kind of summary which you've had to give. And I think that opening slide was really good at actually breaking down all the little elements to this. I'd have to say, I did think the phone percentage was remarkably high. Just before we go, and we're going to have a little break before 11 o'clock, just out of curiosity, does anybody have any questions to Joyce just about that chart? Was there anything from that which surprised you or as per expectations? I'll just quickly ask, does anybody have any questions to Joyce on that? We're all going to be shy. Sue, you had
what surprised me was the baby boomers were so involved in the online digital, because with the baby boomers, we do predate computers. So this is a whole brand new technology for us. So that higher percentage quite surprised me.
Yes, that's true, actually. I think we all have been pushed into the digital revolution. I'm in a cusp between digital, and so I was born in a period, I'm a Generation X, so I was born in a period where there's huge change, and I've seen it over the years, and we've all been pushed into the digital revolution. I mean, with YouTube, another surprising stat with YouTube is a lot of baby boomers use YouTube now to find out how to do things. So if they don't know how to use a particular tool on the internet, they actually go to YouTube to find out, rather than asking their grandchildren who may or may not have time for them, or may get really annoyed with all these questions. Baby boomers go to YouTube, and that's a surprising stat. So the way to reach out to them is through YouTube. That's one of the channels that a small business should consider.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Joyce. Okay, we'll come back for 11 o'clock, and we have Ian from Itzy's websites. Looking forward to that. So have a little bit of a break, and we will come back together at 11. I believe there's Amanda's given everybody a link for that next session. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much.
Bye.
See you later.